only mode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the April 15th CIECA cast. This is Fred Iantorno, Executive Director of CIECA. Today is the second CIECA cast of 2014. Our presenter, Chris Poulos, will discuss salvage with us. The presentation will cover the development of the CIECA BMS salvage messages and the implementation tools to successfully implement the salvage suite of messages. Chris is a senior business analyst for Insurance Auto Auctions. He has been with IAA for 5 years. Chris has contributed to the recycled parts and inventory, salvage, scheduling, and total loss committees. I want to thank all of you for spending your time with us, and to Chris for sharing his insight and expertise with all of us. I will now turn this over to our presenter, Chris Poulos of Insurance Auto Auctions. Chris?
Thank you, Fred. I'd also like to thank my committee members on the Salvage Committee as well as the sponsor, as they were instrumental in developing all of these records and processes that we're going to talk about in today's meeting. Fred, if you could just flip it to the next slide, please. Just wanted to let you know a little bit about Insurance Auto Auctions. Insurance Auto Auctions is part of Car Auction Services, which includes ADESA, Insurance Auto Auctions, and AFC. It is listed on the New York Stock Exchange under the symbol KAR. Next slide. Just a couple of things I want to point out here is that Car Auction Services basically sold 3.7 million vehicles in 2013 and had revenue of $2.173 billion in 2013. Next slide. IAA, as a subsidiary, has approximately 150 locations throughout the United States. And here is a little map with where we're located, pretty much most of the country. Insurance Auto Auctions has a flexible bidding process where they have live on-site bidding as well as live online bidding and proxy bidding that can be sent in prior to the start of the auction. Vehicles that do not sell at auction can sometimes be purchased through our iBuyFast product, which will occur after the sale, after the auction if a vehicle is not sold. In today's presentation, I want to talk a little bit about the IAA implementation, or the implementation guide for an Appendix C for CIECA, and I want to use it to tell the life story of a vehicle. I'm also going to talk a little bit about how it works, talking a little bit about the transactions and codes that the CIECA disposition service provides. I'm going to talk about the salvage provider change codes, which a salvage provider in CIECA terms is like an insurance company, a rent-a-car company, a charity, fleet companies. Basically, it's anyone who consigns a vehicle for auction. I'm also going to talk a little bit about the salvage status update codes. The salvers process the vehicles for the salvage providers, and we do all the things to prepare the vehicles for sale, get them sold, and then settle with the salvage providers. These two code tables that I'm talking about, the salvage provider change code and the salvage status update codes, are very key to the salvage disposition messages. Thank you, Fred. This is just a real high-level overview of the salvage process. I just did a real high-level thing showing the high-level functions. Basically, we start off with an assignment process where total loss vehicles or vehicles that are held to be inspected so they can determine if they're a total loss are assigned from the salvage provider to a company like IAA. And with that assignment, we get instructions either to pick up the vehicle or a notification that the vehicle will be delivered to one of our branches. If we are to pick up the vehicle, we have to go through a process to make sure that the vehicle has been released for pickup, dispatch tower to pick up the vehicle and get the vehicle to our facilities. Once the vehicle is at our facilities, there's a check-in process where the vehicle is checked in, images are taken, any provider enhancements are recorded, and if there's things like the request to store the vehicle, we will do that for the salvage provider. Title processing is a process that takes place in parallel to the vehicle acquisition and inventory process. Basically, these total loss vehicles need to be retitled with the DMV so that the proper documentation is available so it could be sold at auction. Once all the paperwork has been processed for the sale and the vehicle's at our property, we will put the vehicle in a sale for auction. Again, we will auction it. We will auction it via our hybrid model of on-site and online auctions, and if it doesn't sell in a sale, we will either put it back in another auction or it'll go through our IVAS process to be sold outside of the auction. Once the vehicle is sold, it goes to the settlement process. The settlement process is where we invoice the vehicle, taking into account all of the charges, expenses, and the sale price to determine how much money should be remitted to the salvage provider for their vehicle. And then the next part of that process is to pay the salvage provider for the vehicle. So basically all of these things are processes that are covered as part of CIECA Salvage, and I want to kind of just take a chance to stroll through how we can build that story and tell that story using some of the materials we have. So building the story, I want to do it through an Appendix C. In the index for Appendix C, there's an index that's several pages long and contains several questions that tells you what we're doing, what kind of transaction we're trying to exchange, whether it comes from the salvage provider or whether it goes to the or it comes from the salver. So reading through this index, you can see how a story of a vehicle can be told. So I'm going to start with question 2. What is initially sent on a full standard assignment from the insurance carrier or salvage provider to the salver? And that tells me that that is the request for an assignment. Then the question 17 from the Appendix C is, how do I send a message to confirm the assignment receipt? So I'm sending that message back saying I've got the vehicle assignment, here's my stock number, here's the yard that I'm going to put it at, and I'm ready to go pick it up, or I'm expecting it to come into our yard. Next slide, please. The vehicle acquisition, there's a question 18. How do I send a message to inform the salvage provider that a tower could not be dispatched to pick up the vehicle because I have release issues? So I can use those transactions to say I've got release issues, I need help from the salvage provider to resolve it, and that's question 18.5, which is the salvage provider can send a response back letting us know that they've resolved the issue trying to get the vehicle released. Then there's a question on how do I send a message to the salvage provider to let them know that I got the release, that I've dispatched the tow truck, and that the vehicle is now at my branch. So all of those little questions go and build that story of what's going on with the vehicle as it's moving through the process at the salver's location. Next slide. The next piece is the inventory piece, where once we have the vehicle at a salvage location or the branch, how do I send them a message to tell the salvage provider that the vehicle is at our yard and it's checked in or it's ready to be inspected? Question 26, how do I send a message to inform the salvage provider that there's changes to their information or I've added information to their vehicle? For example, I've got the vehicle now, I've added the mileage, I've added some documentation about airbags being deployed, determine whether the vehicle runs and drives. I can provide all of that information back to the salvage provider once it's on our facility. Next question 27, Next question 27ST, how does the salvage provider inform the salver the vehicle enhancements are approved? So if they've requested vehicle enhancements, the salvage provider can approve them. And how does the salvage provider request the vehicle be put on hold? So there's interactions that can occur back and forth from the salvage provider giving us instructions on what to do with the vehicle now that it's on our property. And then there's, for example, message 28, how do I send the message to inform the salvage provider the vehicle has been placed on hold? So I'm just confirming back that I've completed their request to put the vehicle on hold. Next slide, please. Title processing. There's a whole lot of functionality that goes on with title processing. I've taken a few little pieces here. How do I send a message to give the salvage provider an update that I've received the title documents, the original title documents? How do I send a message to let the salvage provider know that I sent the title documents to the state, to the DMV? And then once I receive the title documents and have the sale document back from the DMV, I can let them know that I've got it. Some salvage providers like to approve or reject their titles prior to sale. So there's a CIECA transaction for the salvage provider to either approve or to reject the title that we got back from the state. For the sale, I can provide information on how did I've scheduled the vehicle for an auction, what day the auction is, all of the details for that auction, such as where it's going to be, what lane it is, what vehicle number it is in the run, what day the auction is, all of that type of information. And then at the end of the auction, if the vehicle sold at auction, I can send them a message to confirm that the sale's been made, or I can also send them additional information to say that if the vehicle didn't sell, I'm putting it in the next auction and start that process over again until the vehicle sells. Settlement. The settlement transactions are a little bit different than all of the salvage disposition transactions. They're the invoice and the remittance transactions. And again, what is included in an invoice message? And with that invoice message, I'm passing charges for an individual vehicle, expenses for an individual vehicle, what the sale amount was, some key dates, and then I can then calculate the net settlement amount. This, again, is a batch process for invoice messages. And then once that invoice goes out, I can remit payments through the bank and send a corresponding remittance message for the payments I sent to the salvage provider for the proceeds from the sale. And then finally, after I've exchanged the money and we've settled everything on the vehicle, I can send a message indicating that the salvage assignment has been closed. Next slide, please. All of this is accomplished with 7 CIECA messages. We're going to take a few minutes to go through the 7 CIECA messages. We're going to go through them with the messages from the salvage provider to the salver first, and then from the salver to the salvage provider, and then one that is exchanged both ways. We start with the disposition add request, which is basically the vehicle assignment message, a disposition change request, which is basically allowing the salvage provider to update or provide instructions on the assignment they've sent to the salver, a disposition inquiry request message, which is basically I'm just requesting the current information on a vehicle, and a disposition cancel request, which is a message to cancel the assignment with the salver. The salver, or IAA, has basically one message that they're sending back, which is a disposition status request message. And all of the transactions that we send during the salvage process is this one message with configured to meet the values that we're trying to pass back to the salvage provider. Again, we also send an invoice add request message, which is used to send the settlement for the vehicle, and then there's a remittance of payment message that goes both ways that can be sent by either party depending on who owes payment for the settlement of the vehicle or whether there's some errors that need to be processed. Next slide, please. The disposition add request message, again, is the assignment message. It can be found in the VMS under section 6.2. This is the vehicle assignment, and basically it provides who's requesting this request, what is the name of the company, who's the adjuster, who's the claim handler, who's the owner of the vehicle, who's the policy holder. It provides what information as to tell me all about the vehicle. Is there any special handling instructions that need to occur? Do you want me to pick up the vehicle? Is it going to be dropped off at your branch? And where the vehicle is, which is where do you want me to pick up the vehicle? And sometimes a salvage provider can say, I want this to be processed by a specific branch. For the assignment record, or thank you. There's 4 types of salvage assignments that have been identified by the committee. There's a salvage standard assignment, which is where a vehicle goes all the way through to sale. The title processing, which is basically a title processing only request, sometimes used for unrecovered thefts. A tow only request, where the salvage provider is just asking us to use our towers to move the vehicle from point A to point B, but not sell the vehicle. And there's also a tow and title only, which is a combination of the last two, where we would tow the vehicle to a specific location and do some title work processing for the salvage provider. Next slide, please. The disposition cancel request message is the next message that's sent by the salvage provider. It's located in VMS section 6.2. It communicates an assignment cancellation. It lets us know who's requesting the cancellation for the vehicle, why they're requesting that cancellation, and it provides us with handling instructions on what to do with the canceled vehicle. Whether we need to wait for somebody to come and pick it up, whether we need to move it to a body shop, whether we just need to release it to the owner. Next slide, please. The disposition inquiry request message, again, is BMS section 6.2, and basically it's a way for a salvage provider to request the current status for a vehicle. This is a record that, or a transaction record that we have not defined in the salvage committee yet, and we will be defining it over the next few weeks or months, and we would appreciate if there's people that are interested that they could join the salvage committee and continue to create and generate the documentation for the records that we're exchanging through the salvage disposition process. Next slide, please. The disposition change request message, which is BMS 6.2, basically this is the way that the salvage provider is communicating to the salver all of their instructions, changes, anything they need to do, requests for enhancements to that salvage assignment once they've already provided the assignment. As they're doing this, they're going to provide a change request reason, and they're going to use a salvage provider change code. Again, this salvage provider change code defines a lot of the information as to why this transaction is being sent over from the salvage provider to the salver. And it is in the BMS master code list Excel spreadsheet. And that is something that if a person is working with a business, to go through that spreadsheet and say these are all the possible update messages we can send, that's a good way to try to figure out what you want to implement or decide which transactions you should try to implement as you're doing this process. Again, there's 18 salvage provider change code messages. You want backwards. Going backwards. There you go. Thanks, Fred. I just wanted to give an example of some of the change code examples. Some examples, a release delay, a release resolution, an enhancement update, a request to hold the vehicle, a request to release the vehicle from hold, the salvage providers resolved some title issues, they've approved the title, they've rejected the title. Next slide, please. So this is what the spreadsheet looks like in the release documentation package. It's the salvage provider change code spreadsheet. It contains the code, the description, and then that code is mapped to an Appendix C question of what's going on and how to use that transaction. Next slide, please. So here we go with one of those transactions that begin the abandonment process. Its description, it's 44.5 SP, and if you go to the Appendix C implementation guide, question 44.5 SP, how does the salvage provider request the salver to begin the abandonment process? It tells you what type of code, what type of transaction you're doing, a disposition change request, and the salvage provider change code of begin the abandonment process. In Appendix C, now for the developers that are there, they will see a BMS table after this question of the recommended aggregates and elements, and it's followed by an XML example for them to use when exchanging that request with the salver. Next slide, please. Now we're going to go to the transactions that would come from the salver that are being returned back to the salvage provider. We're talking about the disposition status request message, which is BMS 6.2. Basically, it's used to communicate the current status of the vehicle. It provides change notifications, and it also has a status update being communicated using the salver status update code. There's over 60 salver status update codes that have been defined for use. Don't recommend that everybody does all of these at once, but we'll go through some examples on the next slide. So again, these are some examples. The assignment's been accepted. I'll pick up the delay notification, release confirmation, tow truck dispatch, vehicle checked in the yard, title documents received, title processing issues, state title processing issue, executable title received, scheduled for an auction, and confirmation of a sale are just a few examples from the list of 60. Next slide, please. Again, this has been documented in the Excel spreadsheet that comes along with the release package. Again, it's got the code list, a description of the code, and then a list and where the Appendix C questions where you can find the example of how that transaction should be sent. Again, this is a good place to start with your business users to go through this list and determine what things you may want to send, not send, what's important, and how you want to do this. Next slide, please. Again, here's an example from that list, confirmation of sale. The description of the vehicle's been sold, and the details of the sale are included. It's question 35. If you go to Appendix C, question 35, how do I send the message to the salvage provider to confirm the sale has been made? It tells you that the document type used to identify it, which is the disposition status request transaction, and it's sent to update the provider status, and its status code is confirmation of sale, and it includes additional information about the auction and the bid that took place in the auction. Again, when you go through that, the BMS table, that question has the BMS table of recommended aggregates and elements, followed by an example XML for the development staff to follow. But at any point, going through the questions and going through these code tables makes it a lot easier for a business owner to understand what pieces they should be selecting and using as part of this process. Next slide, please, Fred. The next transaction is the invoice add request. Basically, that is sent from the salver to the salvage provider, and it's used to communicate the information about the settlement information about the vehicle. It's a batch file, and it includes several vehicle settlements together. It provides the net settlement information for a vehicle, for each vehicle in there, along with the charge details and the vehicle sale amount. Basically, this is a nice way to replace paper invoices with data so that you don't have to go through a manual process to take that information from a paper invoice and load it into somebody's system. Basically, settlements can either be positive or negative. Basically, if the proceeds of the sale exceed the expenses and the charges, it will be a remittance from the salver to the salvage provider, and if the charges and expenses are greater than the sale amount, it will be a deficit that's owed that the salvage provider will owe the salver. This invoice add request file, it also includes file totals, batch totals. You can have multiple batches within it, as well as the individual vehicle net settlements within a batch. Next slide, please. The remittance add request, again, is another batch file, and it's used to document the details for an EFT payment or a check. It basically references the invoice settlement, and basically it's used to pay the individual vehicles that were being settled in the invoice. It should balance back to a check or an EFT payment at the batch level, and some people use it to post the vehicle settlements and payments into their financial systems once they occur. It can also be used to communicate settlement errors, and it's sent by the salver for payments of proceeds, and it's sent by the salvage provider for the payment of deficit invoices. Again, all of these transactions that we went through do have a response message, which can be a synchronous or an asynchronous response. Basically, these are not required transactions. They are functional acknowledgments. The one exception is the disposition add response message, which again is that add response transaction, or that add disposition add transaction is the assignment transaction. That response can contain information about the stock number and the yard number that the vehicle has been assigned to, so that the salvage provider has all of that information from the tied back to their assignment. I just wanted to note that in the Appendix C, there is an 18-page process flow diagram that was developed by the Salvage Committee, and it is associated with all of the transactions that are in the Appendix C. If you look under the CIECA message column, it will tell you the CIECA transaction that they recommend to use to provide the information, as well as the code work that you need to send those transactions in the either a salvage provider change code or a salvage status update code. The Appendix C is also including all the detailed transaction examples, as well as generic question and answers. So there's some things in there that are generic and that are for all providers, such as how do I send information about a company? How do I send information about a person? How do I send an attachment? So those are all included as detailed examples in the Appendix C. The Appendix C can also be used with the business owner to discuss and identify the transactions to be exchanged. I would use the index, and then I would also go back to the CIECA code tables and use the salvage provider change code and the salvage status update code, identify everything that I want to try to use for exchange with my trading partner, and then go back, prioritize those, and build those out. The one nice thing about the CIECA salvage process is that it can be implemented in several different ways by the transactions that are agreed to be exchanged. I would recommend that somebody start small with a couple of transactions, maybe assignments, take the assignments, do the salver replies with the response to the assignment, or start with a few transactions that says that goes through that process to say, yeah, I've accepted it. Here's where the vehicle is. Here's the stock number I've assigned, and then go through and build some key milestone dates so you can measure progress of how the vehicle's going through the system with your partner, and then go through and then add additional functionality as you're moving along. Next slide, please. I just want to thank everybody for taking the time to listen to my presentation. Hopefully we can be doing business together and integrating our systems via CIECA.
Well, thank you very much, Chris, not only for the great presentation and showing us what you're doing over there at Insurance Auto Auctions, but also for demonstrating how to utilize the different CIECA documents. You know, the BMS, you tied it very well between the BMS, the code lists, the implementation guide. So I want to thank you for that. And also I want to thank the audience for participating. For those of you that are interested, the recording of today's sessions will be in a PDF form and in a video form. It will be on the website. There'll be a link on the home page within 48 hours, so check back at that point in time. Also, as a reminder, I want you to know that on May 13th, save the date. That will be the date of the next CIECA cast. We'll be discussing the JSON or mobile and cloud computing research work. Actually, it's a little bit more than just the research work. What we're doing in that area in terms of providing, which we will be providing, a BMS MC, which is for mobile and cloud computing. And we're projected for the end of the year to have that project. Also, I'd like to remind you of the 6th annual conference, our CIECA 2014 symposium. That will be in Denver on September 8th through the 10th. I encourage you to save those dates to join us. Again, I want to tthank you for joining the CIECA cast today. Everyone have a great day. Bye now.